story of providence and perseverance. In the 1970s, a Christian worker named Bob Cutler served among university students in Britain. He loved helping young people discover Christ and grow in faith. One day, a leader named Chua Wee Hian asked him a difficult question. Would you consider helping students in Bangladesh? Bangladesh was a young nation recovering from war, suffering, and poverty. Many people had lost loved ones, and the country faced enormous challenges. Yet Bob sensed that God was calling him there. Trusting God's guidance, he left the comfort of home and traveled to a land he barely knew. He arrived with one purpose: to share the gospel and help build a student movement that would belong to the people of Bangladesh themselves. The work was not easy. Bob traveled from city to city, meeting students, holding Bible studies, and encouraging young believers. There were few resources and many obstacles, but he refused to give up. He often remembered the words of Scripture. Let us not become weary in doing good. Year after year, the ministry slowly grew. Yet Bob knew that true success would not come from his leadership alone. He prayed that God would raise up local leaders who could carry the mission forward. One day God answered that prayer. Bob met a gifted young Bangladeshi believer named Mihir Saka. Mihir loved Christ deeply and had a heart for students. Bob saw great potential in him and began mentoring him. They spent time together studying Scripture, discussing leadership, and dreaming about the future of the ministry. Eventually, Bob arranged for Mihir to receive further training at Bible College in London. For 3 years, Mihir prepared himself, growing in wisdom, faith, and leadership. When he returned to Bangladesh in 1990, everyone sensed that God was preparing him for something special. For a year, Bob and Mihir worked side by side. It seemed that the future was bright. Then tragedy struck. Only months after Bob returned to the United Kingdom, Mihir was involved in a terrible accident. As he stepped from a bus, another vehicle struck him. He died instantly. The news spread quickly. Students wept. Graduates mourned. Friends prayed through tears. The entire ministry felt shaken. Many believed Mihir would become one of the most influential Christian leaders in Bangladesh. He was only 37 years old. People asked difficult questions. Why would God allow this? Why now? No one had easy answers. The loss was especially painful for Bob. He had invested years in mentoring Mihir and preparing him for leadership. When the graduates asked Bob to return and help find another leader, he felt exhausted. Yet despite his sorrow and confusion, he continued trusting God. He did not understand God's plan, but he believed God was still at work. Sometimes faith means walking forward when the road ahead is hidden. Sometimes obedience means trusting God's wisdom when our own understanding fails. Bob chose to keep serving. Back in Bangladesh, another young leader began to emerge. His name was Peter Mazumdar. Peter had worked under Mihir and had learned from his example. As Bob invested in him, Peter grew into a capable leader. Slowly the ministry regained strength. New students came to Christ. Bible studies multiplied. Young Christians learned to share their faith courageously on campus. What seemed like the end of the story was actually the beginning of a new chapter. Years later, Christian students at Dhaka University organized a workshop called Jesus Christ, Peacemaker. University departments supported the event, and even the Vice-Chancellor attended as a guest. Hundreds of students and faculty members received copies of the New Testament and Christian resources prepared by the students themselves. The movement that had once been small and fragile was now respected. Doors that once seemed closed had opened. God had been working all along. The ministry spread to universities across Bangladesh. Believers faced many challenges. Floods and cyclones struck the country regularly. Some graduates were tempted to leave for better opportunities elsewhere, yet many remained. They served on modest salaries. They discipled students faithfully. They shared the gospel with courage. And their influence reached beyond Bangladesh, helping start Christian student work in places where there had never been a witness for Christ. Looking back, people could see God's hand through every chapter. Through hardship, through sacrifice, through loss, through perseverance. Mihir's life had been short, but his influence continued. Bob's labor had not been in vain. Peter's leadership helped the work flourish, and generation after generation of students learned to follow Jesus. God's providence often remains a mystery while we are living through it. We may not understand every loss, delay, or disappointment, but the story of Bob, Mihir, and Peter reminds us that God is faithful even when His plans are hidden. When believers persevere, trust Christ, and keep serving, their lives become lights in the darkness, shining like stars for the glory of God.